Yo, what's up guys? I'm Niek from the Producer School and welcome back to a brand new video on Afro House drums. Afro House is all about complex rhythms and a groove that makes you want to dance. And today we're going to dive deep into all the techniques that you need to know in order to create your own Afro House drums. In this video I will talk about techniques like syncopation and polyrhythms, and a good understanding of them will really help you to create better Afro House drums. This tutorial is designed to be quick yet covering all of the effective theories that you need to know, and without further ado, let's dive straight into the video. So for this tutorial I prepared a full drum groove and I'm going to explain it step by step and also according to some theory on rhythms and drums in general. And this way I can kind of talk about the theory and at the same time link it to something in a practical implication, which I think is a really nice way to approach this video. So essentially we're starting with the heartbeat of your drums. In Afro House and basically in any genre which is house or techno, you're using a 4/4 kick. To most of you this will sound completely logical as you tend to do that naturally these days. However, it's nice to think about why this is the fundamental of your groove, and learning about that will also help you to understand the overall aspects of rhythm better. A simple so-called 4 on the floor kick just sounds like this, you all know it. And in a genre like Afro House, it really becomes clear why a 4/4 rhythm like this works so well. Afro House often features a lot of complex rhythms and they are made with syncopation, polyrhythms and all that kind of stuff, which I will talk about in this video. And these things can add a lot of movement and variation to your track. However, these things can also add a lot of complexity to your groove. The 4/4 kick is just there to add a rhythmic stability that people just expect and know that comes back every beat basically. And you can definitely hear that when you just leave out a kick in a whole groove, immediately the stability of the groove just completely gone. So you can really see this kick drum as the foundational layer, and from there I like to start building the groove. So enough praise for the 4/4 kick right now. Let's move on to the next part that I want to talk about, which is syncopation. And first I will do a bit of explanation of the theory for syncopation and then show you how I can apply it myself. So in a 4/4 rhythm you basically have 4 beats playing, and on every beat there is a kick hitting. These beats can be divided into strong and to weak beats. So for example, the first and third beat are considered strong beats and the second and fourth beats are considered weak beats. And basically all the time you see people using claps or snares on top of the weak beats in order to make them a bit more prominent. So basically the weak beats doesn't have to sound weak, but they are more weak in the rhythm relative to the stronger beats. Then in between these beats we have so-called off beats, and these are really interesting when you're creating grooves, especially in a genre with so much percussion and so much drums going on. So between every beat you have multiple off beats, and with a grid like this you have 3 off beats. Placing elements like percussion and toms on these off beats will help you a lot to achieve more groove in your tracks. So you can easily just play a metronome. So for example, let's say we want to layer a tom and we have this tom sound right here. As you can see in the meter right here, just the first tom is hitting on the strong beat and the rest is all displaced to these off beats right here. And when you now listen to the contrast between the tom and metronome that's playing, you immediately hear that you start to create some kind of groove. Exactly the same goes when you play it on top of the kick. And basically if you keep this in mind and start creating different grooves with different elements, you will get something nice really quick. Next, for example, we add some snares and some shakers on top of the toms just to make the sound a bit more full. And it can play the same rhythm, however then in the end we have a bit of a variation on it. Also on these drums I have a vocodex which adds that kind of noise to it. And there's also a preset for this in the Savannah pack, and it just makes a huge difference for these kind of drums. So when you turn it off, just adds that noisy release to it. And those drums are here basically to accentuate the toms, but they are not necessarily really introducing another kind of rhythm, except this little variation at the end. And now you can start accentuating the groove by layering it with more elements such as heads and percussion. But as you can see, all of these elements are basically just accentuating the tom groove that we had already. For example, those percussions are just hitting on the same spot as the toms. In order to add some more rhythmic complexity to the track, we can start adding polyrhythms. And polyrhythms are basically different type of rhythms that are not perfectly aligned, layered over each other in order to create unique grooves. And this is done a lot in Afro House and just in like traditional African music in general. And a very simple example is that we have the main groove, which is this 4/4 kick. And when we add a shaker loop, which in this case is a 1/16 loop, you immediately create some kind of polyrhythm because we have a 4/4 and a 1/16 playing over each other. And if you just listen carefully, when you play them over each other, you can either focus on the groove of the kick or you shift your focus to the groove of the loop. So it's just easy to listen to that. And that together with the syncopated rhythm that we created already, you get a much more complex but still very nice sounding groove. Basically, you can add multiple polyrhythms with different kind of unique rhythms to make your own groove more unique as well. And one of the interesting ones that I've seen a lot in Afro House is this triplet rhythm. So in order to get the grid on a triplet grid, just click here on the 1/3 beat and it will divide every beat into 3, allowing you to create this triplet kind of rhythm. And I put it in a perk which sounds like this. And as you can hear, that's totally different than the groove that we had already. But layering this on top of it will create interesting dynamics between all of the grooves that can work really well in this kind of music. So basically, to have a quick recap of what I just showed you, is that you have a foundation, which in this case is your kick with a 4/4 rhythm. Then next you can take any element you basically want, like toms, claps, shakers, whatever you want, any drum element, and you start syncopating the groove. So you start adding notes on the off beats and you start adding percussion that accentuates this rhythm, and that already gives you a good kind of rhythm. And then you can take it one step further by adding some more rhythmic complexity with using polyrhythms. And in this case I use this 1/16 rhythm and a triplet rhythm. It might be worth even watching a more like classical video about polyrhythms to even deepen your understanding on it, as there is a whole kind of musical theory about this also in like the classical kind of sense. But it's just really important to understand that this is basically these kind of syncopation, and using the polyrhythm is really a vital element that really makes Afro House Afro House. And if you don't do that, it kind of will lack that Afro House signature sound. Besides adding these different rhythmic elements such as the syncopated drums and the polyrhythms, you also want to make sure that you pay some attention to how you humanize your drums. So there are a few ways to do this, and for example you can just increase the overall swing right here. Which basically kind of off places every note so it doesn't feel that robotic and quantized to the grid. And another way you can do it is basically just use the quantize tool right here and select some quantized settings such as the 60 machine swing, and this will basically just quantize it slightly different depending on the preset that you choose. You can also play around with the velocity such as I did here. these last two shaker hits have a bit less velocity, making them hit a bit less hard. And you can do all kind of variations in it in order to get more of a humanized sound. You could also use this randomization tool right here in order to randomize the panning, the velocity and the release of your sound. And if you play around with this, you can get some really cool results as well. So I wanted to keep this video short and straightforward without overcomplicating anything. But if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment down below and I will try to get back to you. If you're curious about the sounds that I used in this project, you can check out the link in the description. And we just released a new Afro House pack, Savannah, and all the samples I used in this video are from this pack. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. And for now, I want to thank you guys for watching and I see you guys in the next video.